So, how many of you own a gorgeous pair of stilettos that never leave the closet because you're afraid you're going to break your neck in them?
Yes.
Thank you. How many of you do not even own a gorgeous pair of stilettos because you're afraid you're going to break your neck in them? Thank you. I'd like to welcome you all to When Women Walk, the first step. I'd like to thank you all so much for being here. I very much value your time, and I promise to do my very best to send you home armed with a toolbox that will help you begin to develop compelling presence, posture and alignment, and fluid movement, all in 3 or 4 inch heels. How does that sound? Very good. My name is Jennifer Sagan, and I am your professor of presence, posture, and the lost art of grace. I'd like to begin by telling you a little bit more about myself. Would that be okay?
Sure.
Great. When I first started this work, I had a friend say to me, "But Jen, you grew up cultured. This stuff is easy for you." Well, are any of you familiar with the term hayseed? That was me as a child.
Oh.
That's where I grew up. And just in case you're not convinced, and you know what that means, you know what I was shoveling with that. Growing up, my mom always used to say to me, "Jen, if you're not going to cut your nails, at least clean the dirt out from behind them." Okay, so the only culture that really came out of my childhood was when I was put into dance class. And it was through dance class that I discovered my passion for dancing and teaching. From there, I went to the Boston Conservatory, and I got my BFA in dance and a concentration in musical theater. And then I continued on and started performing professionally. I auditioned for this show called Will Rogers Follies. It's a beautiful Tommy Tune show. And it was at my 11th audition for this show. And in the audition, you have to sing, tap dance, you have to do high kicks, and you have to walk very elegantly and beautifully. And it was at this 11th audition that the resident director, his name was Stephen Minning, he came up to me and he whispered in my ear and he said, "Jen, you have to walk toe heel, not heel toe." And I went, oh. So I applied the note and I booked the show. And what I realized was I didn't know how to walk. So I studied the women in the show. I studied the women who had perfected it. I watched how they carried themselves. I watched how they held themselves. I watched what they did with their legs, how they placed their legs, how they placed their feet, what they did, how they worked their muscles, where they set their knees. And I would go back into the dressing room and get in the mirror and try to apply it to myself. And one of the things that I learned is what works for one might not work for another. So you have to tweak and refine and hone to get what best alignment for your body, best positioning for your body. So that experience carried me through my entire performing career. After teaching for 20 years and performing professionally for 15, 7 of those as a Radio City Rockette. Rockette work is so specific and so detailed that I really refined my eye for detail, and how I learned how the difference between a half an inch, what a half an inch adjustment could make in the look, and how to best utilize your legs and best utilize your body. And I took these tools, all these tools that I acquired over 15 years of performing in 3-inch heels, up and down stairs. The show Will Rogers Follies is done, the entire show is done on stairs. And we'd wear 3- and 4-inch heels in the show. Apply these tools on stairs, on a concrete, on a steel stage, on the street, and I learned how to apply all of these tools and techniques to be able to accomplish that safely, comfortably, and confidently. I took these tools and I translated them into my everyday life. And my inspiration for that was this show that I did. I booked one of my dream jobs besides the Radio City Rockettes. One of my dream jobs was to dance and sing with Tommy Tune. And I got that opportunity. I was allowed that opportunity. And when you go into rehearsal for Tommy, he holds you to a higher standard. You come into rehearsal, your hair is done, your makeup is done, your outfit, you don't go in there in ripped sweats. You go in there in a beautiful outfit and you carry yourself like a lady in his rehearsals. So it taught me to up the level of the presentation of myself. And I was so moved by that experience and so honored to have had that experience that I thought about it and I thought, I'm walking around the streets of New York City almost every day, running around. Tommy lives in New York City. You never know when you're going to see him. You never know when you're going to bump in. I never know. I might bump into Tommy Toon on the street. You just don't know. So I decided when I go out, I need to just up the level of presentation of myself. And not only by, combing my hair, because I had no problem with going in sweats, and I don't know if I combed my hair that day, forget about makeup. So not just that part, but to start to translate it into my physical self. Because I thought, what if Tommy sees me before I see him? I want to be standing up straight. This was what an impact he had on me and what a brilliant man he is. But one day I was walking down the street, and this was probably 2 weeks after 9/11, and I was walking by, I call it my firehouse. It's the firehouse on 48th and 8th, because that's my stomping ground. And I was there to sign in the sign-in book, because for the first time the line was not 12 people long to sign in and send your regards to the firemen and your intentions toward those that were lost. And I was signing in the sign-in book, and I just stood there for a while, and I looked over, and standing there, offering his prayers and his reverence, was Tommy Toon. And yes, I was put together. So, it just shows you just never know. You never know who you're going to bump into. You never know who you're going to meet just walking around on the street. So this is where I discovered the importance of creating image and creating your presentation of yourself. And you can do that any way you want. You can create any image you want of yourself, and you can present yourself in any way that you choose. I discovered this through this experience. And one of the things that I realized was that posture and alignment is the foundation of creating image. Because, and I'll explain more about this later, but I found there were times when I was walking around the city where I couldn't be perfectly put together. But when I held myself and I carried myself in a certain way, even in jeans and sneakers, it still projected a specific image that got the reaction that I was after. So here is a wonderful example of creating image. That was wonderful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
It's a perfect example of creating image. There is no way she was feeling that sexy woman in that outfit, but nobody knew it, right? And she created that image and got the reaction, the desired reaction that she wanted. So it's very, very good. It's a great example. There is a doctor, his name is Elmer Green. He's a Mayo Clinic physician who's pioneered in biofeedback for treatment of disease. And he stated that every change in the physiological state is accompanied by an appropriate change in the mental emotional state. So let me say that again. Every change in the physiological state is accompanied by an appropriate change in the mental emotional state. So you might be tired, you might be angry, you might be stressed, you might be upset about something. But when you take posture as I teach it to you, just by making that physical adjustment, and guess what? It doesn't cost you anything. It's not about going to the gym or buying a new dress or buying the right makeup or getting your hair done, which all those things are wonderful too. But this is a wonderful place to begin because it's simply making a postural adjustment. and you can start to change how you feel inside. When I'm exhausted, I don't sit like this. I sit very straight, or I stand up very straight, because your spine wants to sit one vertebrae directly on top of the other, where if you're like this, it's all muscle work. It's your muscle that's having to hold you up, which exerts more energy. But when you stand up straight, your spine is just holding itself up. There were times when I was doing the Christmas show. I remember doing the opening number, and we're dancing, and we had a big smile on our faces, and I'm almost near panic because I didn't know how I was going to kick my legs at the end of the show. I was so tired, but I got taller, and I grew, and I got my spine really long, and those legs just went up. So it's just simple adjustments in your posture. Albert Einstein happens to agree with me. He says you create your own universe as you go along. So if I have Albert Einstein backing me up, I think we've got something here. Another great example of creating image. This show that I did, that I told you about, Will Rogers Follies, the cast of that show, we became very close, like a family. And to this day, we're still very, very close. And every couple of years or so, we would get together and have a reunion dinner. And it was on one of these occasions that we were at this dinner. And I had another business at the time. And we were working on a fairly large project. It was a wonderful, sizable project. And I was telling the group about it. And one of our friends, one of the cast, his name is Michael Goddard, and he's wonderful. And he was actually one of the coaches that taught me how to walk because he had an excellent eye. He looked at me, and he goes, "You're loaded, aren't you?" And I just looked at him, and I went, he didn't need to know that I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills at the end of the month. But that's the image I projected. Because nobody needs to know that. Nobody needs to know that that's a little bit of a stress in my life at that time. And so I just went with what I was feeling. I wanted to create the certain image. And also by putting out that image that you want to create, you'll be amazed at what comes to you, too. Because put your energy out, and that energy that you put out is what comes to you. So you'll be amazed when you decide, you make the decision about what image you want to present, how that image is fulfilled. It may not happen the way you think it does, but you'll be very surprised to see the changes that can occur in your life if you stay true to that intention. There's this wonderful book. It's called Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. Have any of you read it?
Yes.
It's a wonderful, wonderful book. It's written by a man named T. Harv Eker. And the second half of the book it's called The Wealth Files. And it's all these concepts about the attitude of rich people and poor people. And by rich people and poor people, he means people who are successful and people who are struggling. He's not talking about class status or anything like that. And wealth file number 1 I thought was absolutely wonderful. He says, rich people believe I create my life. Poor people believe life happens to me. Mm-hmm. So again, it's what you create. And what a great place to start. If your energy is swirling the bowl and you're going, I don't know how I can pull myself out of this right now. What a perfect place to start by just simply pulling your shoulders back, going through postures. I'm going to teach it to you. And start there. It's a great way to start because, as Elmer Green says, that change in that physiology is going to consciously or unconsciously change your mental emotional state. He also states the inverse, that your mental and emotional state will consciously and unconsciously affect appropriately your physiological state. Also, you can tell when people are stressed or nervous or tired or angry or upset, right? You see it. Yes. So it's the same deal. We're just working the inverse. So, how many would be interested in the tools and the techniques for creating the image you want to present?
Yes.
Wonderful. Let's get started. ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to walk across the room and just give me your very best walk. There's absolutely no judgment here. This is a very safe place, and I want you to feel very, very comfortable, just as if you're going to dinner and you're walking through a beautiful restaurant and you're all dressed to the nines, as you are, looking gorgeous, and just give me your very best walk across the room. Okay? Wonderful. Have fun.